The Ducks have a TV deal finally. We'll talk about that. And I don't know, kind of flying off the seat of my pants here. I mean, I'm sure once the show goes on, I'll have stuff to talk about on this edition of Locked On Anaheim Ducks.
Your Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jason J.D. Hernandez. I've been covering hockey for well over a decade. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Don't forget this podcast is free and available across all platforms, including Stitcher, Spotify, Odyssey, yada, yada, yada. Twitter, at StimpyJD. Show's Twitter, at LO_Ducks. Yeah, let's get right into it. So, some good news. The Ducks will be on TV after all. Hurrah! It was announced not long ago that the Ducks had a TV schedule. They finally have a TV deal. They are going to stick with Bally Sports SoCal for this season, for now. But hey, that's fine. That should be good for this season. Most of the games will be on Bally Sports SoCal. Some games I think are going to be on Bally Sports West. I don't know why. I mean, maybe Clippers, I guess. Who knows? But yeah, I saw that there was a handful of games that were on Bally Sports West instead of SoCal. And there's a handful of games that are also on KCOP Channel 13. And the one nationally televised game, March 31st at Vancouver. By that point of the season, I get the feeling that's going to be the who cares game of the night. Because, late season, two teams that are probably not going to be in the playoffs. Who's going to watch that? That feels like a throwaway game. So only one game on regular TV, like national TV, because the other two national games are ESPN Plus or Hulu exclusives, and that is it. You have the game against the Minnesota Wild on March 19th. Again, a late season game. Ducks might be out of it by then. And then also an early game, November 14th at Nashville. That one would actually be fun to watch. That would be a fun game for a national audience. So maybe that one is okay. Otherwise, all 79 other games will be on SoCal West or KCOP Channel 13 for those of you with the rabbit. Who has rabbit ears still? Actually, no one should have rabbit ears. That shouldn't even work. I think everyone by now has cable or streaming or at least one of those digital boxes that are pretty cool. So yeah, those games will be on Channel 13. There's a few of them. What took them so long? What took them so long to make this deal? But whatever. It is what it is. Here's the other part that I know some Ducks fans are like, oh boy. John Allers is back for another year. And right there, right alongside him, for his 30th year with the Ducks, Brian Hayward. Yep, John Allers and Brian Hayward is back. Look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I can't lie to y'all. I realize that pretty much every other fan base hates those two. There's even a handful of Ducks fans that don't like him at all. And there's even more Ducks fans that simply tolerate those two. I will not say what category I'm in. The only thing I can say is that a good percentage of Ducks fans would definitely like some kind of change on the TV side. Now, on the radio side, I was sad to see that Dan Wood is now gone from the radio side. Super nice guy, by the way, Dan Wood. But at least Steve Carroll is still there doing play-by-play, and Emerson Edom is going to be doing color commentary. So that part I like for the radio side. That's fine. But TV side, it's probably time for a change. Probably time for a fresh start on the TV side. because I've been watching Ducks games for a long time, and I've even said a lot that, yeah, Hazy tends to be a little too homerish at times, and some of the stuff that he adds to the broadcast doesn't really contribute a whole lot. For what it's worth, I mean, those two are a symbol of, I guess, I don't even know if I want to use the word stability here, because yes, they've been there for a long time, but stability for a bad era. I mean, that kind of seems, like a thing. Ali Lozoff is back at least, so yeah, let's go, Ali. But man, I would like to see maybe even Emerson be the color commentator. Actually, that I wouldn't mind. John Allers and Emerson Edom doing color commentary on TV. That would be cool, folks. And then you could have Alexis do color commentary on the radio side. Alexis does a good job with Duckstream. I think she'd be fantastic at color commentary. So I think those are some of the changes that I kind of would like to see. But, it is what it is. Oh, also Kent French is going to be outside the Ponda with Guy Bear. Love those two. But there's got to be some kind of change at some point. Also, we're going to be having, all the programs like they usually do. So all that's coming back. And at least we'll see our Ducks on Bally Sports for at least one more season. Yes, I'm saying at least one more season because of the bankruptcy case, because of the regional sports networks, all going to crap, especially the ones owned by Diamond Sports. Bally Sports not doing well at all. I'm surprised they're back for another season, but they must have worked something out. So there you go. Ducks back on Bally Sports for, at the very least, one more season. And then from there, who knows? All right. We're going to head into the first intermission while I think of... Actually, no, now that I'm talking, there is something else that I do want to talk about kind of in this same regard as far as televised games. So I actually know what I'm going to talk about, and I'll tell you on the other side. And now a word from DoorDash groceries. So those of you remember a couple shows ago, I downed some maple H2O or some maple water from the Carrick brothers. You can't get that here in the States. That's a product of Canada. But maybe you are craving something maple, like some kind of maple candy bar, or maybe maple syrup for your waffles. Then head over to DoorDash Grocery, because they are connected with several local markets like Stater Brothers, for example. I think they're connected with Vaughn's. So, hey, if you can't go out, maybe you're sick, maybe you just don't want to leave the house, then you could trust DoorDash to deliver your, favorites from the grocery store. And you'll get exactly what you ordered, or they'll make it right. So sit back, enjoy quality groceries, just like you pick them yourself. And here's the best part. You can get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $20 value when you use the code LOCKED at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code LOCKED. Don't forget, that's code LOCKED, or half off your first order with DoorDash Grocery. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, locked in with Jason JD Hernandez. So as I was talking through all that, it occurred to me that the Ducks only have one nationally televised game. Now, I know the other two aren't exactly nationally televised. It's ESPN plus Hulu, their streaming services. So only one game on the national scale. Remember 2 years ago, and even last year, when the Ducks had multiple games on TNT, they had multiple games on ESPN, the big network. Now that is not the case at all. The Ducks are pretty much invisible from national attention. And, there's a big lack for national attention this year, mainly because the Ducks did not get the number one pick, mainly because Trevor Zegras and Jimmy Drysdale have not signed. I'm sure when they were going through the national broadcasts, they were going, oh, they're not signed. What if they don't play at the start of the season? What if it takes a while? Well, here we are. That's exactly what happened. This lack of movement on the contract side, it's costing the Ducks. It's costing some national TV money. And, that's partially what it's all about. It's all about that money. And if you're not bringing in that money, then who's going to want to come to the Ducks in free agency next season? Yeah, that's a tough ask. I mean, look at the free agents the Ducks got. They don't exactly move the needle as far as national broadcasts. But again, here we are. We're at this point where in such a short time, I don't want to say the Ducks are now completely irrelevant from national exposure, but when Connor Bedard goes to Chicago, when the Los Angeles Kings make a slew of moves, when the Vegas Golden Knights had just won the Stanley Cup, they're going to go to those teams in the West. Chicago's got a bunch of games. The Kings have got a bunch of games. Vegas has got a bunch of games. Now, instead of the Ducks having that national TV slot at that hour, more of those games are going to Vegas. And the Vegas Golden Knights have a lot more nationally televised games this season than they had the previous few years. So, good for them. They have more national games. The pressure's on them. Now the Vegas Golden Knights have a big old target on their back. The Ducks, the reason they got the national exposure is because Trevor Zegras was the big, shiny new toy, and everybody wanted to see what he did. I mean, you saw what he did on it was an ESPN game at the Buffalo Sabres. That was a nationally televised game on ESPN when Trevor Zegras pulled off that flying Z, over the net pass to Sonny Milano. That was the perfect stage for that, and everybody went nuts. ESPN went nuts. The internet went nuts. Everyone was going, holy crap, on that pass. And now that's almost completely evaporated in just a couple of seasons. So the lack of national attention is both good and bad. It's bad in that you don't get to see some of these bright young stars on a national stage. The good about that is it takes off a lot of the pressure from some of the young guys that are assuredly going to be coming up this season. And believe me, there's going to be a lot of young players that are going to be coming up this season. Maybe a lot of them coming from San Diego. Some of them late season coming from juniors. They won't have that pressure of going, oh my gosh, I'm going to be on ESPN. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be on TNT. They're not going to have too much of that this season. Whew. But what the Ducks are going to have, they're kind of going to fly under the radar, I feel, a little bit this season. So because they're going to fly under the radar, where does that leave the Ducks as far as exposure is concerned? Not a whole lot. I think a lot of the online sources, they're going to go to the national games. They're going to go to the Vegas games, the LA games, the Colorado games. Colorado's looking to be stronger this season. Not Arizona. Chicago. Those Western teams are going to get the most. Actually, you know who's going to get a lot of games this season? Because they were a big, big surprise. The Seattle Kraken, who were one goal away from making the Western Conference Finals, and their parent team, my Coachella Valley Firebirds, were one goal away from winning the Calder Cup. So all those other teams, they had such spectacularly good seasons that it, to some audiences, leaves the Ducks a little bit irrelevant. And I get where they're saying that. All right, we're going to head into the second intermission. I got one more thing that I want to mention as I talked about the youngins. Yeah, I'll get to that on the other side. Welcome back to Locked On Anaheim Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Once again, You are locked in with Jason JD Hernandez. So there is one other topic that I want to touch on, while at the same time, I want to avoid talking about Z and JD for the rest of the week because everyone else has an opinion on it. Look, I'm not going to talk about that the rest of this week. Hopefully that gets resolved over the weekend. If it doesn't, then I'll talk about it. But for now, I want to talk about what's coming the following off season and possibly this upcoming trade deadline, because there's a bunch of players that are going to be free agents after this season and making the big bucks starting off. Uncle Rico, Adam Henrique, making almost $6 million this season. Jakob Silfverberg making a hair over $5 million. Combined, they are making $11 million. I don't think both of them are going to re-sign. I don't know if both of them make it to the end of the season. They could very easily be trade targets if one or the other player has a pretty good first half of the season. It wouldn't shock me at all to see one or both of those guys kind of on the blocks during this year's trade deadline. So that's a possibility. Ducks could lose some of that contract money there. They may or may not come back. Max Jones, he's a restricted free agent. He may or may not come back. We have to see if Max Jones can really come back from injury 100% strong and see if he can just regain what we think we can get from Max Jones. So that's someone that we do have to kind of watch out for. He is 25 right now. He is still on the younger side, so watch out for him. Sam Carrick, he's a UFA. I don't know what's going to happen with Sam Carrick. They might re-sign him for the league minimum again. They might not. Someone else can pick him up. Brett Leeson. Now, that was a good pickup for the Ducks off of the waivers claim. I thoroughly like that pick more and more during the preseason. I like it more and more. And he's making minimum there too. So he's not costing a whole lot. He might improve. He might come back. He's only 24. Who knows? You have Ilya Lyubushkin, probably not going to come back. He's a UFA. He's making almost $3 million this season. So he might not come back. There's a few players that I think the Ducks need to think about as far as re-signing. First and foremost, Jackson Lacombe. He'll be an RFA next season. I would love Lacombe to come back. Maybe at a little bit higher contract, maybe in the $1.5 million. That would be fine. Colton White, I'm not so sure. Robert Haig, possibly. Earl Vakanainen, he might come back. But there's one other player that I think the Ducks, or two players the Ducks need to think about possibly extending next. Oh yeah, Isaac Lundstrom, he's an RFA. Watch out for those contract negotiations as well. Two players that the Ducks might need to focus on as far as re-signing or extending. One of them is Lukas Dostal. I think Dostal could be the goalie of the future for the Ducks. I would like to see him get a full-time backup role next season and possibly lock him up for a team-friendly contract, a player-friendly contract, maybe 2-3 years, get him some kind of stability, and maybe pay him a little bit better. So that's one contract where I would like to see the Ducks kind of do something with. The other one, Mason McTavish. McTavish is making under $1 million the next 2 seasons. I think McTavish could have a very solid season this year. I could see him playing the majority of games. You know, he's tough. He doesn't get hurt. I could see McTavish demanding somewhere at least in the $3 to $4 million range, but that also depends on how he does this season. The Ducks need to pay their young players, and for the following offseason, maybe think about what are you going to do with Mason McTavish? What are you going to do with Lukas Dostal? Those are things that you do need to think about for the future. So those are just some of the players that I think we need to be on the lookout for in the next 12 months as to who gets re-signed, who gets extended, and most importantly, who's going to lead the Ducks out of this rebuild. Thank goodness they re-signed Troy Terry, and he's locked up for a number of years. Thank God. All right, that's going to do it for this podcast. Next time out, actually, we have 2 more this week, and it'll be prediction time. I will make some roster predictions, and I will make some season predictions. Yeah. I will officially give my predictions on certain players. Maybe I'll give a hot take or two. Who knows? I'll predict the division, the Pacific Division all out. And yeah, that'll be the next couple of shows. And then after that, Ducks hockey at Acrisure Arena. Oh, before that, there's that game at Pechanga Arena. So be sure to watch that. All right. You can follow me on Twitter at StimpyJD. The show's Twitter's at LO_Ducks. You could email me at lockedonanaheimducks@gmail.com. You could follow me on, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, ad-free on Amazon, also on SiriusXM. Once again, thank you all for your continued support. It is greatly appreciated. For Locked On Anaheim Ducks, I'm Jason J.D. Hernandez saying have a great rest of the day. Please remember to be safe out there, be kind to one another, and Ducks fly together.